western reaches of the city. This is near the American Legion, and this is a corridor that a lot of folks have used to get to the beach areas as well as to the American Legion, and prior to the storm, to the 7-Eleven area. So it's highly traveled. There were no pedestrian facilities along the roadway. Folks were using it at all hours of the day, including at nighttime. And so it's been a fairly extensive project. It's on schedule to wrap up, I believe, by the end of summer. And it's required a lot of major utility relocation on Bonita Springs Utilities part, as well as major storm infrastructure being installed in the ground to provide for the level space to put the pathway. Pathway is an 8-foot wide sidewalk. There's on average, a 2-foot grass strip that kind of separates the sidewalk from the roadway, and then there will be an F curb or a curbing on the eastern edge of the roadway. So you'll have that curb buffering you from the sidewalk and on. Under design, where this blue and gold arrow is a sidewalk project that will connect 41 to Old 41 on the south side of West Terry Street. So that project's been under design for I believe about 8 months, maybe a little bit longer. And so we'll be coming back to you in the course of the upcoming year with design concepts as well as right-of-way needs and concerns. But that project's well underway. Previously, and really what kind of spurred it, was the multi-use path and bike lane facilities that we constructed on West Terry. So those are completed. Last year's workshop, we incorporated 2 new significant projects into our capital improvement plan. Those were Paradise Road here, running north and south, as well as Old 41 essentially from the roundabout north to Rosemary Drive. Those projects, neither one of those will be small in dollar amount. I believe they're $10 million for Old 41 estimated and $13 for Paradise. They are in the capital improvement program, and as we move forward, in the upcoming years, should council keep them in there, we will develop them and build them. I would suspect they will both kind of move into a construction phase, in a fairly concurrent fashion. The Paradise Road probably should be pursued, on a bit of an accelerated time frame based on the golf course project and the drainage infrastructure that kind of dovetails in and allows for this project. So those will be things to be considering in terms of timing as we come into the next 2 to 3 years. We also included, they're not listed in our CIP, but council did give us direction to start planning for some type of similar, I don't know what it would look like, but pedestrian bike infrastructure or reconfiguration along the Pennsylvania corridor from Arroyo Road easterly to Old 41, and that will become more relevant after you've seen the FDOT's presentation on its suggestions for improvements at the US 41 Bonita Beach Road intersection. So one of their concepts includes, and I don't want to give away their thunder, but it includes some connectivity that would connect you to the Pennsylvania corridor, and so that would probably necessitate us needing to look at those improvements, really in a long-range setting, in the next 5 to 7 years. So we'll incorporate that in the next CIP along those lines, should council be okay with that. We also have, it's hard to see here, it's in light blue, we have Rosemary Drive. A few years ago we completed Bonita Drive, which was an 8-foot pathway and landscaping project. We've been carrying Bonita Drive in our CIP as well. It's out for design or will be here shortly, and most of the construction dollars are already programmed, but that'll be another project that kind of, you can see, interconnects. And then very similar is Goodwin Street, which is under design currently, and will be coming back. I believe here in the spring with the 60% design. We presented it to council back in August. They've been working very diligently on the design. Of note, one of the concepts was looking at a roundabout at Matheson Street. And unfortunately, as we've gone through the design process, there were some significant conflicts that have really negated that as being a viable option. So the designer is looking at some improvements that will make it a safer intersection, but they're going to fall short of being a full-size roundabout. Generally speaking, there's also Dean Street is listed in the long-range plan. It's not shown here on the map, but it's been sitting in the CIP as another long-range pathway project. We would be open for any other corridors, but I think we've covered dollar-wise certainly what I think the city is capable of being able to deliver, but really based on kind of a concept of east-west, north-south need, I think what we have on the books is pretty sufficient for currently where we are. And in addition, it's really hard to see, but we also have East Terry Street all the way out to Bonita Grand Drive. So you can see what's happening here is kind of a methodical east-west, north-south type of spine being laid in for bike and pedestrian infrastructure. So I've touched on it, and I just kind of want to touch on it again because that map is not insignificant in terms of the dollar amount that it represents in construction that I've been talking to. Paradise Road, we've estimated about $13 million project. Old 41, somewhere around 10. A big driver in that expense is one of these key components that we deal with whenever we're looking at these retrofit projects, and that is drainage. Typically what happens is the area that we're looking to, in the city's existing rights of way, the area that we're looking to build the facilities, they're drainage ditches. They're open ditches, and they convey water, but they take up a lot of real estate. And so instead of trying to buy, in some places it's not even practical, instead of trying to condemn somebody's front yard for even more space, we really try to maximize the utilization of our own space. And the way we do that is by installing enclosed drainage. And that's a fancy term for pipes, drainage pipes. As soon as we start down that path, inevitably, here's a nice long pipe run on Terry Street, inevitably, when we place the pipe in the ground, we'll come into conflict with the existing utilities that are in the ground. And so it typically is their responsibility to move at their own expense. And the one utility that we really do affect with these projects very significantly is our own water and sewer utility, Bonita Springs Utilities. So whenever we look at these projects, you can almost guarantee a complementary utility relocation project at an expense that is borne by the utility provider. So we do stay in coordination. I work with their director of engineering to let them know where the city's capital improvement plan is going. I'm sure they're probably watching or will watch this meeting. And we make sure to communicate with them any changes in project scheduling, in the long range, so that they can adjust their capital improvement planning accordingly.
I think one thing that was important to point out is that we try to give them advance notice so that they can also, in their long-term planning, decide that if they should be increasing their capacities as well because of potential growth in that area, or if they have a deficiency where they want a larger pipe or service, that gives them that same opportunity to make those upgrades at the same time.
A great example of what Arlene is talking about is the years ago, the downtown renovation project. They took the opportunity to increase the water main through that corridor in anticipation of future redevelopment of our downtown. So, our project kind of necessitated them having to relocate anyways, but then they took the opportunity to look and say, based on what the city's planning is for this area, we really need to increase the size of that piping. I do want to point this out. I think I did in some other slide, but you can drive along. This is along Imperial Shores, and something that is as benign as a ditch like this And that's similar to what the situation, this is on West Terry, but it's similar to what the situation was on Imperial. It looks like a benign thing. You say, well, we'll just put a pipe in there and you'll build a sidewalk. Well, it can turn into really significant infrastructure in the ground. So in the case of Imperial Shores, these are the equivalent of 3-foot diameter pipes, and then it runs out to a 4-foot diameter pipe that is collecting all of the water. This is a junction box. This is the final destination of the water at the head of a canal. But it allows for the sidewalk, but I just want to point out, it's this type of infrastructure that makes these things expensive. And that's just the nature of what our challenges are, and it's the nature of the fact that we're retrofitting in a built environment. Another key component that we've kind of focused on here in the city in these projects is a physical form of separation. And there's a couple of ways we achieve that. I mentioned it earlier. One that we really try to include anywhere we can is curbing. Here you are along West Terry Street. These are driveways, but this was a widening of a 5-foot wide sidewalk to an 8-foot sidewalk. You can see it is being very well utilized. And further down the line here where we don't have driveways, we now have curbing. Prior to that, this was a 5-foot wide sidewalk. It was located kind of in this area, very close to the pavement. There was no curbing, and so if someone momentarily looked down and grabbed their cell phone, they ran a high risk of coming into conflict with folks on the on the sidewalk, in the pedestrian infrastructure. So, that curb can provide a little bit of extra warning and some potentially life-saving measures. Oh, geez, speaking about it, here's what it looked like right there. So we went from that to a curb and separation. And we try to do that anywhere where we're retrofitting. The one thing about curbing, it does require, as soon as you start to curb a road, you do have to start dealing with the drainage in a more expensive fashion. That also drives the need for pipes. Another thing that we use to try and define, that space is being not appropriate for vehicles where we can, is landscaping. So you'll see Terry Street's a good example. Bonita Drive, if you've been down it, is a good example of where whenever there's enough room where we can put some irrigation and landscaping in, even if it's the smallest of trees, it helps kind of reinforce that visual message to folks driving that, beyond here, your vehicle really doesn't belong. It also, helps advance the aesthetics of the city, and I know we're going to be talking about branding and signage later. We see this as a way of reinforcing that look and feel of the community. So I already talked about these in detail, but I'll just kind of give you more of a zoomed-in version. In a previous workshop, we really adopted Old 41 from north of the roundabout to Rosemary Drive. You can see they're right here. These are school kids that have crossed the street. They're walking in a line abreast, beyond the sidewalk typically. If you go out there when school's being let out, you'll see that this 5-foot sidewalk, maybe it's 6 here, is really, it's beyond its capacity. So what we would be looking to do is widen this, perhaps where we can, put some medians in, and then have a similar sized infrastructure on the western side of the road as well, so that the volume of folks that are moving through there can move through there safely. Paradise Road is another area. We recently finished 2 sidewalk connections, Maddox Lane and Cockleshell, that kind of provided a continuous walking loop. So now up there you can walk along a 5-foot wide sidewalk to an 8-foot on Maddox, and then down to a 5 along Cockleshell. And a lot of folks in this community are walking for exercise, for enjoyment, as well as walking kids to the school bus stops. So as this new project comes in with the drainage, it opens up a few opportunities because it'll provide drainage interconnections on the east side of the road and would allow us to come in with a more robust network, more appropriate for the amount of folks that are there. We envisioned it as somewhere along the lines of a 6-foot sidewalk on the eastern side of the road and a 12-foot multi-use path along the western side of the road with enclosed drainage, landscaping, lighting, and things to, again, advance that network. So that's really where we are currently with bike and pedestrian side of the transportation equation. We have another mission, which is really new roadway network, and it's probably what most people think of when we're talking about transportation. We recently had completed Logan Boulevard, which was a new mile roadway, which was important to the city. But this is probably one of the most important roadways for the city, and it is currently under design. It is the northwest quadrant roadway. I was just in a meeting this morning with South Florida Water Management District and our design consultant. We own this right-of-way by and large that runs through here. There are a few corner clips that we will still need to negotiate with our neighbors that own the shopping center. But this road is designed to provide relief to the US 41 Bonita Beach Road intersection, in particular, and folks coming off of the beach that are trying to make a left-hand turn movement to move northbound towards northern parts of Bonita or Estero or parts thereon in Lee County. And so we have the road under design. The drainage system is being designed, as I mentioned earlier, and we will be coming back right now tentatively at April 19th meeting to be presenting a 30% plan to the City Council. You'll be able to see roadway cross sections of what this will look like and see what we're looking at here at the intersection of Windsor and Bonita Beach Road in terms of improvements, and we're very excited about this project.
Why do you call it a 30% plan?
These terms are misnomers. So, and in this case, it'll be very much a misnomer because of the right-of-way. But a 30% plan gives you a concept, and you generally can move some things around. Now, in this case, I think that flexibility will be more limited, but we'll be showing you some options there. It's really an engineering term. By the time you get to 60, that's really where you get into a misnomer, because 60 is more like an 85 or 90%. The scale, I suppose the best answer I can give you, Councilman Corey, is the scale of changes that you can make, the magnitude, is far more diminutive on a 60 or a 90% plan, because you start to have the grading, the elevations of where the road is are tied in, and things become very interrelated. So, the height of this pond is related to it's the neighboring roadway and the shopping center. If you said fundamentally change this, by the time you're at a 60%, you're really, there's been so much effort that's gone in to tie everything relationally to it, you're really not in that position. If you say, make the sidewalk 6 feet wide instead of 8 feet wide, well, yeah, you can probably make that type of change. So that's what the nomenclature it gives you an indication of how much change. Now, in this project, it's probably a little bit, what I've just relayed is probably not quite the way it will work with this one.
You don't have so many utilities on this project either, do you?
I haven't seen the utility markups. By and large, no. In this area, no, probably not.
Then you get over here.
You get over here, yes, there's some utilities, but at this point, this is probably not new drainage or anything. These are surface treatments by and large, so you may not really be impacting the utilities there. There may be some opportunities with Bonita Springs for, I don't know, but, at some point as we get our design nailed down, there may be some areas where they would like to set a lift station or something within the property that we would get, that's where this, might come into play with 60 and 90, or 30 and 60%.
Was Fisherman's Paradise coming online sometime?
Yes, they very much so, or I believe they're getting ready to clear their property. Oh, John's not here. I'm pretty sure that they're getting ready to come out of the ground, from what I understand. They have their permits, at least from the Water Management District, and I believe they have their permits on our end, or at least some portion of them.
The tree advisory board got it. They got their permits from us.
Generally speaking, these are the kinds of roads we like to build. I mentioned Logan. As the mayor pointed out, you're working on more raw land. It's a little easier. Your construction costs should be a little lower, and you can build it quicker. You're not dealing. There is no existing traffic that is making this maneuver, right? And so when you come out here to build this road, you can gang tackle it. Logan Boulevard was very much the same way. When you get into working on an existing roadway where you have existing traffic, your costs go up, your safety factors go up, it becomes harder. And, unfortunately, the city's built out, by and large part. And so there's very limited opportunity for something on the more simpler side of things. And this one is to a degree. Now, it's not so simple when you connect to Bonita Beach Road down here or to 41. So it's got a little bit of both in it. But it is moving along. And like I said, we're trying to deliver it to City Council as quickly as we can. And a major milestone on that will most likely be, as long as our schedules hold, here in April when we come back to you with the cross sections, what we think the road should.
Florida DOT, they're going to be making a presentation next month.
Yes, so
Be involved with this too, probably.
they are in a way, and they. I don't know how to explain this. This is a city roadway. This is a city project. They have been looking at what improvements they can make in concert with this that would improve the operation of this intersection. So I told you we were looking at this to help this intersection. They have additional ideas beyond this, improvements, that they're going to present in April 4th at 5 to 7:30 at the city's rec center. And that's an exceptionally important meeting to attend. And I'm glad you brought that up.
So it's April 4th?
14th.
How about this?
April 14th.
It's
Okay.
April 14th. See, I made a mistake. Again.
Simmons-esque. That was pretty
Huh?
good. That was very Simmons-esque, right?
Yes.
That was great.
No.
Used to call out every time Feeney made a mistake. That was Simmons' pleasure to point it out, and he loved it. So it was like an ongoing thing they had back and forth. So that was kind of fun.
But was it? I mean, I did have the slide with the letter.
Yeah.
And it is highlighted here if you can read that.
But
Straight from the horse's mouth.
what about lighting?
And yeah, it is the 4th.
Is it the 4th? See, I didn't make the mistake. I made a typo. It's April 4th.
Make up your mind.
Typos are my department.
Yeah.
It'll be advertised. As we come closer, it'll be on the city's website. What will happen, and that is a typo on my part, it is April 4th.
You were right the first time.
That's right. They will provide this. They did this last year for Old 41. They'll provide information cards, and they are very controlling on their advertisement. It is their project, what I'm speaking on right now. When we receive that information, we will push it onto the city's website and through our media ways to get the word out additionally beyond FDOT. But what happens is, and I don't want to share what their work is. I mean, I generally know what they're going to show. It complements the work that we're showing here, and it ties into it in some way, shape, or form, and it expands upon these ideas. and it has other ideas for US 41, creative ideas that are not, that aren't
But
flyovers.
basically, they're aware of our project.
They're very aware of our project. We make sure that they know, we've made sure for many years that they know that we were building this road. I was on a phone call with them 2 weeks ago, reassuring them that we were building this road, that we were under a large design contract, we had purchased the right-of-way, and that we were moving forward. And their plans acknowledge that, and that's why they were wanting that, reassurance. But that's an important meeting. Their timelines will be much slower than ours. We're under design here. I believe we see this being able to start construction in a 2-year kind of window, and we've been under design for 6 months. I think we inked the contract in October for these guys to start designing, and they've really hit the ground running. The meeting in April is important. And if we can accelerate it, we would recommend that we do with City Council. The key is going to be, I mentioned there was some additional right-of-way we need to work out with the shopping center, and the timing of how quickly that will happen or doesn't happen will dictate whether this takes longer or shorter. But generally speaking, we're looking at a construction start about 2 years from now.
And Matt, may I ask, what about lighting?
We have lighting and landscaping involved, is all part of the design of this project.
Perfect.
So it's similar to the way we did Logan Boulevard. There's a model around here where folks would build a road and then come in and do that later. And in Logan, we didn't do the lighting. We put all the conduits in for the lighting, but that's a corridor that was dark, and some of those folks may not want the lighting, so we did hold off there. But the landscaping was put in the day the road, the day before, was put in the few months before the road opened. But this will be the same. The landscaping design is there, so you won't end up with a barren corridor the day it opens. It would be a fully completed road, and lighting is a part of that.
Very good.
Again, I did make it. I just have to make sure.
It says the fourth in the letter. It says the fourth in the letter.
Did you have a question, Chris?
Yeah. Matt, if you assume that there's, first of all, are you done with your presentation at this point, or is there more?
I'm finished.
Okay. If you assume that there are grant dollars available from the state or from the feds related to infrastructure resiliency,
Mm-hmm.
and taking into account the impact of Irma on the city, do you think there are projects that we could undertake to take advantage of those kinds of grant funds, or we could identify that could take care of? I mean, were there problems with our road infrastructure, drainage infrastructure that we could, if there were grant dollars available, we could address?
I think we're always looking for grant opportunities. So the simple answer is, yeah, we do and would continue to look to those ends. We'll continue to look. I don't know that I have any magic bullets. In the realm of transportation, I think this is an absolute, and we're funded. We're moving along those lines. That's happening. I alluded to it. I think as we come into the next budget planning sessions with this council, as we start to bring these things out of the ground, there's a whole nother conversation to be had about where do we go next, particularly with roads. I think we have a very good handle on bike and pedestrian infrastructure. I think you see that. I think we've identified more projects than then there's probably available dollars as we go on. But when it comes to new roadways, there's limited opportunity. There's limited corridors. There's controversy. Let's just be honest with you.
I think what Matt's trying to say more politely is you've basically got the easy hanging fruit. The tougher fixes are going to be, and the tougher conversations are the next tricks. And those are going to be ones that unfortunately corridors might be adjacent to residential units where there had been looked at corridors that now there's new development there. So those are going to be tougher conversations to have, and they're definitely going to require public workshops to work through those.
And regional coordination.
Yes.
That's the other big key. These things are, these are us. This was us. Logan, there was some regional coordination, but it was us. But the next suite of projects, and they're not all clear in my head, but it's going to require really some long discussions and planning. The way this process that we've been doing seems to have worked in all of these venues, whether it be stormwater or this, is we have identified a suite of projects. You've heard me say a lot of this was kind of put in motion. A lot of the new ones that were identified last year in terms of our CIP. We tend to identify them, start to knock them down and move through them. And for a year or two, really these things are more of an update unless council wants to really change. And then as we start to move through that workload, then we start to move into the next kind of generation of projects. And I think that next generation, when you're talking about new roadways, is going to require a lot of discourse and discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit off, it's not on this project, but Forrester, they find out they have septic tanks.
I'm not aware of that.
And they're right on the bay and right on the ocean, throw that into your design, whether if you could.
I'll talk to Bonita Springs Utilities. I'm not aware of that. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty certain there's a gravity sewer main that runs down the road. So I'll talk to the folks at Bonita Springs Utilities.
Kings Q has sewer, I think.
Yeah.
But anyways, they're still working on figuring out how to do that straight and maybe throw that in there on top of it. See what we.
We'll look at the issue, but I'm not.
Look at that. I hate to
not so
bring
sure
it up,
that
but somebody brought it up to me, so I thought I'd pass it on before we got too far into that project. Yes, Chris?
Matt, the state has announced that they've allocated over $500 million to go to 10 lanes on I-75 between Golden Gate and Corkscrew.
Mhm.
I don't know when that project would start, but I can only imagine with construction on I-75, there's going to be increased traffic through Bonita Springs to get around that construction. So maybe we need to, I don't know, be thinking about what that means to us, or consider
Toll
what
roads.
it means to us.
What? Toll roads.
Toll roads.
Toll roads.
Would generate some revenue.
We'll put toll roads on it, Imperial Parkway or 41.
Yeah, I mean, I think those things are a long ways off. I've heard differing, opinions as to when that 10 billion will arrive here, but it certainly will have an impact on us. Really, the growth in this area has had an impact. The nature of the commutes that are happening here, it reminds, I lived in California in the late 90s, and the interstates are huge out there, and it appears we're moving to that model, which has its pluses and minuses.
Absolutely.
Anything? Yes.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Matt, the Paradise Road extension, how long is that?
So I want to say it's 6,800 feet. Don't hold me to that. I can measure it.
Something like that.
Is it? Yeah. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can tell you this is, from here to here is, I want to say it's 3,800 feet. You know, so if you can imagine that.
That's Shangri-La and above.
It's somewhere around there, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Yes, sir. Well, I'm going by memory on the extension. I think it was 3/4 of a mile or something.
I think it's 1.25 miles.
Anything else? City manager?
Well, that'd be pretty close, wouldn't it?
I think unless you have any other questions, so this is, as I said.
Public comment? Do we have any public comment?
Well, I was just gonna say, just as I said previously, this is the way that we plan for our capital improvements budget for you. So with each of these presentations, we'll continue to move forward in those directions. I think one of the other items we talked about was we were considering an update as well to the bicycle pedestrian master plan. So we'd like to get back with the engineers who helped us with that and start tweaking that a little bit. I think we've noticed from some developments that have come through on the private sector side that there's some need to discuss some widths of some of the pathways that we want to make sure that they're consistent with the type of pathways that we build as well. So there might be some updates you're going to see from that.
Matt, with respect to the 41 Bonita Beach Road interchange and the improvements that FDOT may make, how comfortable are you that the flyover idea is dead and buried?
If you'd asked me that question before January, I would have told you I am not comfortable in any way, shape, or form, and I would have spent this entire presentation telling everyone to come on April 4th. And I would be really upset that I had a typo in my presentation. But having met with them, and there were some things, they were on track, if you remember, to actually do that presentation a year ago. And there was some information that they hadn't accounted for that really made them have to back up and punt. And so they showed me where this workshop is going to go. And the short answer to your question is I'm very comfortable with what they have settled on, and I think they have really addressed the city's, respected the city's desires and the outcome. I'm not from Missouri, but show me, right? But from what I've seen, and I won't speak confidently about it until April 4th comes and goes, but I think that they have really addressed our needs, and I'm thus far very, very pleased with what they have come up with in response to the challenge that they had last year.
Thank you.
I would add that at the staff level, with our communication with Lee County government staff, we've reiterated our concern that it remain a context-sensitive at-grade improvement, and that has been respected as well. So if the council wishes to converse with the electeds at that same level, I'm sure that would be appreciated as well. But at a staff to staff, we're very comfortable with those conversations we've had.
I do want to add what Arlene was speaking of. We do have some dollars for the bike ped update, and really what's happened is we have either identified in our capital improvement project or just outright built what was in that plan, the major pieces. So it really does need an update, and it probably needs them along the lines that Arlene's speaking of about widths and things, and where do you go from here that you haven't identified? We don't have it in the budget, but this is probably what should occur for the roadway piece. Is there really needs to be a transportation plan update for that to then start that discourse on some old ideas, or old ideas with new concepts, or just new roadway corridors. You know, that would maybe be the vehicle to start that conversation, to have some folks identify where your needs are, where there's some opportunities. I got to be honest with you, looking at the map, none of it, is going to be easy or cheap.
Okay.
Is it ever?
You're going to address the Bonita Mine, Bonita Grand.
I was just going to mention that one.
Meeting?
So this evening, there will be an item under my items that will be the Bonita Grand Drive expansion. That is going from from Terry Street up to the Larry Kiker Preserve and the future city park there. That is not presented in this because under our agreement with BG Mine, they are paying for those capital improvements. So they're paying for the acquisition of right-of-way, they are paying for the road and the complete streets. So drainage, everything, all is on them in that agreement, so it's not part of our capital planning. So this evening, I will be presenting the route study, which is one of the requirements. We're determining the planned right-of-way and whether there'll need to be any additional acquisitions. We have our consultant, our engineer will be here, but I'll walk you through that, and I think there'll be some representatives from BG Mine here as well. So-
That's good news.
So that will be cheap.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Relatively speaking, yes.
Can I
Very
ask a
good.
question, Mr.
Glad to
Mayor?
hear that. Yes.
Rick, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanna make sure I understood you correctly. My understanding was they were gonna pay for that, correct?
Correct.
In totality, so what we're doing is coming up with the method and what it will look like, but they're still paying for it, correct? If there's any acquisitions or anything like that,
So,
that's not on
so
us.
part of this, the specifics of the route study is that they're out there acquiring right-of-way. They have already submitted.
We'll be acquiring the
Will
road.
be acquiring,
With their
well,
money.
they have acquired some rights to the right-of-way. Other rights will have to be acquired, and there may be situations where the city will actually condemn pieces of property, in which case they will front the costs to the city in an escrow account to take down those properties. But in order to determine what should be taken for the width of the right-of-way, we have to do a route study to determine what is the best path from point A to point B.
So who pays for that?
They're paying for
They're
that.
paying, okay, so.
They've paid
paying
for,
everything.
they're
Okay,
paying for
great.
everything, right, so
We
we've,
make the decision, but they're paying.
But they're paying
Yes.
more.
correct, because we have to follow the same process we would if we were designing a road for ourselves, our own acquisition. What we've provided for is that they will escrow the dollar amounts based on our appraisal estimates of what it'll take.
Hey,
and then
Fred,
we'll move forward from there.
pull up next to the microphone a little bit.
Due to the, when we made this agreement, is this road gonna factor in the additional traffic that's gonna be going to the Kiker Preserve to and from it?
The thousands of vehicles to the Kiker Preserve. I don't know.
Many thousands, probably.
It's a dead-end street right now.
Quite honestly, the county is working on their design of the Kiker Preserve, and, they are still in a planning stage. And so I don't know whether at this point, whether they're planning on Bonita Grand being the connective point to the Kiker Preserve. They were looking at alternate places for that connective point to be coming down on Bonita, so I don't know that answer, but generally speaking, I don't think you're gonna have enough vehicular traffic, given the approvals, what Bonita Grand folks will be building, that what is currently being conceived, it'll be adequate.
When the project for Bonita Grand first came in, they wanted a 4-lane, close to a highway connecting up that way. As part of the settlement, we are down to a 2-lane divided and complete street. What is actually being up to their project, what we're talking about from there on is literally the driveway entrance to our park.
Yeah.
It's not considered to be any thoroughfare to anything additional.
So will their right-of-way acquisition be such that it'll accommodate the 2 lanes and the median, but you can't add another lane each side, make it eventually 4 lanes if we pay for it?
It's gonna be 100 foot, right?
So I believe it's 100 foot under the agreement, and then there's drainage facilities. There is existing easements across multiple properties to get access to that, but what we have decided through our process is we want to own the actual underlying road. So it won't be an easement, it won't even really be a standard right-of-way, which is essentially a dedicated easement. It will be owned by the city so that we have control over it.
Okay,
That'll be the plan going forward.
good. Thank you.
And Lee County staff is aware that that's on our agenda this afternoon. We've had some very brief discussions about coordination in the future with Larry Kiker Preserve, but in the future, we'll be coming to you with requested support for the berm project as well, and how we connect there, the southern berm, which was a part of the original water plan that the Lee County South watershed.
South Lee County watershed update.
So we're gonna be very supportive of that. That is in some legislative requests that Lee County's moving forward with, and so that's why we're gonna keep in coordination with them on those updates.
Anything else
No, good. I'm glad you asked these questions now. That'll make it easier. Really, what you'll be looking at this evening, probably after a very long day,
Okay, well,
will be
let
just
me-
picking
let me-
which route.
let me throw a little curveball at you. How about 951?
This is not 950.
Not gonna be 951?
No, this has not. There's no discussions going on about 951, anything with the city. This is our right of way.
It's a dead-end street at our park.
Correct.
And we have some sort of control over that, maybe.
Well, it's our right of way. There's at this point there is nothing in the long range planning at the county level either for a 951 that goes through Kiker
I don't
Preserve.
know where I read that or something, but anyways, that's good. We ready to adjourn, maybe?
I think you have public comment.
Public comment? No, I guess not. Ready to adjourn? We're adjourned. Do we have a party going on?
Reconvene at 5:30.
Well, we reconvene city council 5:30, but we also, if you'll give us a minute, there's some staff that like to come down as well, and we do have a little
Yeah, we're
reception
gonna have a
for
little party.
Miss Deborah Philippek.